Come on. We have to get out of here.
I don't feel well.
Did they hurt you? Let me see. You're bleeding.
I've fought much perhaps more fierce.
Horror's had a pretty good run lately when it comes to video games, with Amnesia the Bunker only a couple of months back, Dead by Daylight getting some cool updates as well, and then the recent release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A game that asks the question of how long can you watch someone get horrifically killed with a chainsaw until it starts to lose its appeal. But it's the ones that go under the radar that I often find the most interesting. And it seems you can't go all that far without seeing someone on Steam trying to make some kind of Resident Evil homage. Sometimes this works out really well in the case of a game like Nightmare of Decay, a first-person shooter inspired very much by the original RE on the PS1.
That's creepy.
Or something like Tormented Souls, a fixed perspective, alone in the dark inspired title set inside a creepy hospital. Then on the flip side, you get a game like Selene's Unbearable Night, and if the title and the banner art aren't enough of an indication to let you know what you're getting yourself into, well, then nothing will.
Take this, please.
Thank you.
Self-described as a third-person survival horror game, which it is. You search for key objects, solve puzzles, and face dangers in order to escape, and delve into the narrative story of Selene's Unbearable Night. And I don't know if I have some kind of undiagnosed medical condition that makes me attracted to crap like this, or maybe I thought it's just been too long since I've really ripped into a game like this, but either way, I did delve into Selene's Unbearable Night, which was true to its namesake, both at night and unbearable.
What the hell was that?
The story goes you're playing as the eponymous character, Selene, who kinda looks like Wish.com Jill Valentine or Scarlett Johansson if she ever brushed her teeth with a meth pipe. Right from the main menu, we're greeted with her giant floating head peering left and right constantly as if she's become sentient and knows I'm staring at her. And what I find hilarious right off the bat is how the game even asks me if I'm sure I want to start a new game. Like it's become self-aware and is absolutely trying to make sure that I really want to play it. Anyway, after that, the game opens at a petrol station in the middle of nowhere, like we're somehow lost in a void between Silent Hill and the prologue in the RE2 remake. Trying to walk off and observe the surroundings is kind of pointless because it always snaps the camera back around to force you to pay for your petrol.
I should go pay.
But the most immersion-breaking element right here is that the petrol doesn't cost $2.50 a goddamn litre.
I should go pay.
Either way, once Selene finally attempts to pay, a woman comes running up to her out of nowhere, only to be shot in the back, ouch, before Selene is then put into a chokehold and passes out. She wakes up shortly after that inside a basement to find Olivia, the woman she met earlier, injured and lying on the floor beside her. Yeah, and look at that, the attackers were nice enough to give her a pillow.
Thank you. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this.
One of the first things I noticed at this point was that god-awful speech-to-text voice work. And look, I get it, man. Like, not everyone can afford to hire proper voice actors. But I mean, damn, dog, if your plan B is to use a speech-to-text program, then you should really start thinking of plan C and D.
Fine. But I promise if you try anything again, I'll shoot you without hesitation.
Either way, your goal is to then find a way out of the basement, and after bashing down a poorly locked door with a stone, because, yeah, that's something you can totally do,
one more try.
You find yourself inside this dimly lit mansion, which is where you can start to see the Resident Evil influences coming on thick. I mean, for starters, Selene's definitely got the proper attire when it comes to the modern female survival horror protagonist, with the whole jeans and tank top combo. Finding your way out of the house requires finding 5 different books placed around the rooms at random and then bringing them back to an empty bookshelf. And there's a puzzle too, which involves setting a clock to a particular time. They even worked in a blocked bathtub sequence where you got to pull out the plug to drain the water, which all seems very familiar.
Something very familiar about all this.
Throughout this area, you also see this weird apparition peeking out from under beds and around corners, and look, I may be a simple man, but the basic image of an emaciated corpse staring at me before disappearing still does a pretty good job at making my asshole pucker up.
My name is Jeff.
Plus, nothing gets me more scared than seeing something clipping through the ceiling, let me tell you. But I think the scariest thing about this whole area is the corpse you find in one of those rooms, which looks like it got imported from a PS2 game, along with the fact that someone's installed the exterior unit for an air conditioner on the inside of a building. I mean, what a dumbass.
Oh God!
Also, whoever lives in this house must have one of the fattest butts of all time, because the toilet seats in this joint are big enough to fit 2 asses. I don't know, man, maybe the game's set in Texas. Yeah, I don't even want to know what happened on this shitter either. Anyway, after running around and finding all these books, you find a hidden compartment which shows you some grainy film footage, but as far as I could tell, this gives you absolutely no information whatsoever, outside the fact that the person who worked on this game has either seen the Blair Witch Project or Sinister. And after solving that clock puzzle, you get a screwdriver and the combination for the keypad in the basement, which then finally lets you out of the building.
You made it.
Come on. Do you need help?
I can do it. I'll follow you.
One of the cultists then shows up and gives chase, at which point about all you and Olivia can do is just haul ass through these dimly lit tunnels, whilst the Silent Hill siren blares off in the background. Eventually though, you're both cornered, but before the cultist can finish you off, that corpse from earlier shows up out of nowhere and knocks the guy off the ledge behind you. Moments later, Unity asset store Jada Pinkett Smith is involved in some kind of bizarre ritual, which then gets interrupted before Selene and Olivia are separated for the first of many times, taking away your weapons in the process.
I'll be fine. Just go.
Hilariously too, because you're now unarmed, the game introduces stealth takedowns, where apparently forcing someone to give you a piggyback ride is enough to snuff out their life completely.
My turn. Okay, well, I don't.
It's okay, Ted.
But it also kind of reminded me of that Tomb Raider reboot, you know, where Lara goes from being this completely innocuous babe in the woods to a vicious killer within the span of a few minutes. In fact, they even give you a bow and arrow shortly after this as well.
This will be useful.
After piggyback riding some more cultists to death and then crawling through vents like Solid Snake, I'm suddenly getting chased again, but then that's nothing that a good old arrow to the face can't immediately fix.
Where are you?
Down I go.
On a positive note too, I will say that there are some moderately well thought out puzzles in this area, like having to track back the wires from all these power boxes and turn them all on in the correct order. The next area after this has you finding fuses to power up the lights, along with turning different valves to control various flaming jets blocking all these corridors, and it is kind of basic stuff, but it does show that at least some modicum of effort has gone into putting these sequences together. There's even a jump scare here which actually got me pretty good, to the point that I almost swallowed my goddamn tongue.
Fuck!
What follows though is one of the worst mirrors I've ever seen in a video game, where it's pretty obvious that the mirror is really just acting as more of a television screen than an actual reflection of my surroundings. Plus it's also pretty obvious that this whole sequence is ripping off that one room in Silent Hill 3. And isn't that a bit of a sad fact as well, that a scripted event in like a 20-year-old game somehow looks better than one in 2023? Still though, I mean if nothing else, I guess it is kinda creepy, even if that mirror in question looks more like a goddamn flat screen. What follows after this is the first boss fight in the game, if you can call it that, as Selene catches up with that woman who ran away from her earlier, but also at the same time gets ambushed by what I can only describe as a combination of a grasshopper and a necromorph in Dead Space. Which has a weak spot so obvious that it may as well have a fucking bullseye painted across it. Right, so what you're supposed to be doing here is trying to lose its line of sight, at which point I guess it just gives up chasing you, and you're then able to shoot it in the back. Either way though, shoot this thing in that weak spot like half a dozen times or so, and it finally goes down for good. Olivia then shows up again, and the two of you lightly jog away from the creature to escape it, before then, in a bizarre plot twist, she betrays Selene and knocks her out for some reason.
I think he is gone.
I'm sorry.
But wait! There's more!
Then, in a whole new chapter, we're now playing as Olivia in the events that led up to her coming across Selene in the first place.
Don't bring her into this. We had a deal.
It's kind of like in the old Resident Evil games where they'd shift things up a bit and having you play as like Ada Wong or something. You know, showing these ancillary characters doing things from their own perspective and explaining why they've got their own motives and agendas. And in what's obviously a cleverly crafted throwback to the opening and totally not a way to reuse those existing assets, Olivia has to find her way out of an identical looking mansion.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, and I guess we can also add AI art to the list of grievances I have with this game, because take one look at this painting in the attic and try to convince me that that's what real teeth look like. This section of the game also introduces these new enemy types, along with what seems to be some kind of parrying system with melee attacks, but as to how this actually works, well, I have no fucking clue. Seems sometimes you can parry an enemy's attack if you time it properly, but most of the time here I just take a hit and lose a giant chunk off my health bar. Oh yeah, and I love to how when you die in this game, it just hard cuts to the game over screen. Doesn't even show any kind of death animation, it just instantly cuts to that menu. I don't know what other kinds of powers these monsters have, but trying to walk on top of them also causes the physics engine to absolutely lose its shit, flinging their corpse up in the air and making your character glitch all over the place too. Maybe it's meant to be like a homage to Dead Space, how you could get enemy corpses stuck on your feet after stomping around too much. Nah, they just fucked up. At least they do one thing right here though, which is give you a shotgun. And if there's one staple of survival horror that you absolutely have to have, it's a shotgun. I mean, it's even a double-barreled one too. After shooting down a few more of these skinless walking testicles, you come across another young woman named Sam.
Are you sure you won't kill her? Well, we won't know if we don't try.
About to be killed by some cultists and this large creature that's got spikes coming out of its arms. So again, you save her and then take off with the creature in chase, all while Cyberpunk 2077's theme music starts playing in the background. And I mean seriously, does this music not sound incredibly similar, or is it just me? This whole chase sequence is pretty lame though, and the enemies are even nice enough to stop completely if you need some extra time to catch your breath. Olivia and Sam finally make their escape by dropping down into a river of piss.
Are you okay?
Before then being attacked by another dollar store necromorph. Similar to the one from earlier, but only this time the weak spot is on its head. You know, in case that giant glowing hemorrhoid wasn't enough of an indicator. But what I find the most impressive about this whole sequence is how Olivia is able to move so quickly in waist-high water. I mean, she must have the lower body strength of a professional teabagger. I mean, just in case you haven't wasted all your ammo yet, the game throws another boss fight at you, this time against that giant spiked arm monstrosity from earlier, bringing back that ghetto cyberpunk theme as the backing track. Also introducing a new dodge move where pressing the spacebar lets you more or less dash in any direction to avoid incoming attacks, which was a move I'd soon come to learn has been available for almost the entire game, it just never mentioned it.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
Right after this is where it gets back to the point where Olivia betrayed Selene, ending in her having some kind of argument with her boss, where we again get some truly memorable dialogue.
We had a deal. Magnus.
Do wait. You know what is going to happen.
You done fucked up now!
Before she then releases Selene from her cell, who we're now back to playing as.
Okay, we'd better get moving.
They even give you all your weapons back at this point, which is kinda handy to take on these new enemies, which I don't even know how to describe. I mean, I guess you'd call them balding baby doll head spiders.
What is that?
I don't know, man, they look like something that Sid from Toy Story would have tucked under his bed. What you encounter in the sewers though, now this is the absolute stuff of nightmares. What I suppose you could call like a giant crawling spider head with a prolapsed anus and human hand coming out of its mouth. And I will give the game credit for one thing, in that this abomination is truly disgusting. But it's immediately ruined by that hilariously sudden game over screen. And also Selene's running animation. I mean, what is up with the way that she's running here? She looks like an NPC in the Grand Theft Auto games when you start shooting off in the streets or something. Plus, it's also like she's running away to the Benny Hill theme. This also reminds me of those levels in Crash Bandicoot when you're running away from like a giant boulder or something. And again, like how funny is it to think that an almost 30-something-year-old game does a chase sequence better than this does? It does end with what has to be another homage, where you wait until this thing gets close to an explosive barrel for shooting it and blowing it to smithereens.
Oh God!
And again, like maybe I'm just trying to look for nuggets of gold in a giant steaming pile of shit, but that does remind me of the giant alligator encounter from RE2.
Oh God!
Either way though, that thing right there more or less was the final boss for the game. Because all that's left after this is a final sequence which hints at another gruesome encounter to come. Then after murdering a few more cultists with your bow and arrows, Selene finds her way to the surface. Or does she? final screen says that apparently another chapter's in the works, which is more of a threat than anything else, before the whole thing finally comes to an end around the 2 or so hour mark.
Are you sure about that?
All up, you can see that there are some interesting ideas here, but I can't shake the feeling that it's just a bit of an asset flip. Plus, a lazy way to cash in on people who browse Steam using their dick. I mean, I know that's how it got me. You see that banner and the oddly attractive protagonist and can't help but click on it out of interest. And on that note too, I am genuinely surprised that it doesn't have adult content. I mean, Selene's model is noticeably more detailed than every single other asset in the game, by far. Whether or not she's been bought off some kind of Unity asset library, I'm not entirely sure. But it wouldn't surprise me if she's been fully modeled in other aspects, you know, if you catch my meaning.
We're talking about sex, right?
Right.
The campaign not having some kind of fucked up game over screen where she ends up being violated by these horrific creatures, well, it almost seems off-brand for a game that looks like this. This means that the game lacks the appeal of other indie survival horror titles, but then also the novelty and the humour you get from those kind of games that try to cram in pornography as a means to get more sales. Either way though, I have no fucking idea what Rely on Horror was talking about when he recommended this thing. Because I'd recommend this about as much as I'd recommend wiping your ass with Tabasco sauce.
Son of a bitch. You will pay for this.
But I did learn something interesting though in the fact that Selene's Unbearable Night is actually not the first but the second game this developer's worked on, with another game called Unbearable being the first entry, something which is also still in early access. And how you can go from having one unfinished game to working on another is just a bit of a testament to Steam's so-called quality control, and just shows off yet another amazing title that gets released on that platform daily.
Is something wrong, Grandpa?
The blackest eyes. The devil's eyes.
Yeah, check out the banner after this one as well. It's like she smelled an absolutely raucous fart and is trying to cover her nose to hide the smell. And again, like that should be a dead giveaway as to what I'm getting myself into, but as the old saying goes, in for a penny, in for a pound. So, shall we?
Oh shit, here we go again.
Released in 2022, in Unbearable, you're playing as the totally not Claire Redfield-inspired Claudia, heading to the town of San Jose in Mexico with their friend Emma to investigate an abandoned asylum, with there even being a whole co-op aspect to the game as well.
No problem. Just don't go in that damn place without me.
The first thing that happens though when you arrive in town is some crazy old lady starts going on about prophecies and fire and brimstone like a total nut job, trying to cast you out of town, which is supposed to serve as some kind of foreboding omen or something.
You will give entrance to the beings of darkness, and you will corrupt everything in your path with your evil.
Evil!
Only her granddaughter named Luna shows up like 5 seconds later and tells you that she acts like this to all the visitors, so in reality she's just some grumpy old bitch.
Sinners like you are the ones who bring evil.
I just want attention.
Claudia then goes off for a walk with Luna to meet up with her grandfather, who's apparently San Jose's chief. Because yeah, I guess a town with over 100,000 people in real life is going to have something as antiquated as a village chief. This whole sequence has you walking through all these back streets where it looks like a Modern Warfare 2 map, whilst some very Akira Yamaoka inspired music plays in the background. Then we get to sit through this whole cinematic involving more of that good old-fashioned text-to-speech dialogue between Claudia and the chief, Carlos. And look man, I don't know what the hell Carlos's accent is supposed to be, but this guy sure as shit ain't Mexican.
That is the story that many people have decided to believe.
And that's really the problem you face when using this kind of approach to creating all your voice work, where all the nuance, tone, and just basic accents is often completely lost.
Everything that has been happening has been my fault. You have to be brave, Claudia. Not everything is bad.
What happened? Where the fuck are you?
I need your help.
What?
Listen to me. I'm stuck in the damn asylum. There's no way out.
Give it to me. You take care of the camera. Close the fucking door. Oh no.
At one point, Carlos offers Claudia some kind of weird liquid to drink, saying it'll help her see things she doesn't normally see. And look, I shouldn't even have to say it, but if someone you just met is trying to get you to drink what sounds like a mind-altering substance in a strange place far from home, well, it's probably best to say no.
Here, drink a little of this, so you can open your mind a little more.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Because as expected, when Claudia drinks it, she starts to trip balls, and has this kind of weird vision of her mother, who apparently suffers from alopecia. Before after that, she then leaves out of either embarrassment or because the dev didn't know how to keep the plot moving at that point. Either way though, from here is where it starts to get really weird. Because at this point, we get the return of that Silent Hill siren. Not to mention, a fucking Demogorgon from Stranger Things attacks Claudia. I mean, tell me that that's not just the Demogorgon from Stranger Things carried across verbatim. Along with that, you're also being chased by a Nemesis-style creature at what could be best described as a brisk pace. And if you die during any of this, it sounds like when Neo gets unplugged from the Matrix. There's a melee fight against a weird guy in a mask, which is an educational sequence on just how bad melee combat in a video game can truly be. Before Claudia and Emma then wake up to find themselves inside the asylum. I'm sorry, the asylum.
The asylum. We are in the damn asylum.
Isn't that what you wanted?
Here though is where it does start to feel more like a proper Resident Evil clone, with this asylum having all of these locked off rooms and important items hidden away in different areas, with the main objective being to find 3 fuses to power up the elevator. The first weapon you find is a baseball bat, but you can also eventually get a crowbar, then a pistol, and if you find 3 small keys hidden around the hospital, unlock a storage case that's got a shotgun inside. Later on, you even find a more powerful revolver, kind of like the Colt Python in the RE games. And then there's that Nemesis-style enemy that keeps popping up to pursue you, similar to the Tyrants, with this asshole even coming back multiple times before finally taking the hint. I also find that camera angle very similar to Silent Hill 2, with the way the flashlight illuminates the ground in front of you, and also the backdrop of a mental health facility is way more in line with the thematic elements in those games as well. It even has a locker sequence like right out of the first game. The co-op component is also actually kind of impressive, forcing the 2 characters to somewhat work together, moving around boxes and utilizing each other's strengths.
Do you see any mechanism that opens these doors?
And it does make sense that out of the 2 women, the one who's got an upper body like a CrossFitter is the one who's better at lifting heavy shit. Melee combat is laughably bad though, and I thought at first the game was locking up whenever I got into combat, but it seems that this is by design because it does this really weird thing where it slows down time for like a second or so every time you land a melee hit on enemies. Half the time though, I just let the AI kill everything, which is way easier, not to mention a lot less work on my end. And the fact that the items flat out respawn every single time you load a save file meant I never had any shortage of healing items or spare ammo. Don't get mistaken though, right? This is still a heaping pile of garbage, and it takes a whole lot of willpower just to keep playing.
Well, I see that you were really determined.
It still does have this really bizarre tone though, like the whole thing's been created by an alien trying to pass itself off as a human. For instance, I have no idea what the hell is going on with all these icons. It looks like something an 8-year-old would create in MS Paint. There's a sequence where you find a film reel and then go and play it on a projector, which starts this whole separate flashback sequence, and throughout all of this it says 1080p on the bottom of the screen. Like the guy who made this didn't even know the difference between what film and digital video is.
Oh no!
This is like a whole separate playable sequence where this young couple are trying to sneak into the asylum.
I'm stuck in the damn asylum.
You know, for some reason. And it turns out there's this disused subway tunnel that runs right underneath the entire facility. Because yeah, subway tunnels always run underneath abandoned mental hospitals. I don't know, man, maybe it's a reference to Ghostbusters 2. You know the bit when Venkman and Spengler dig that hole in the street and then abseil down and... Nah, they just fucked up. Later on as well, the girl from this flashback ends up helping Claudia escape. And in fact, I haven't seen stealth takedowns so brutal since Soap and Captain Price teamed up in Modern Warfare.
Oh no!
The problem Unbearable has at that point is that it's still going and it doesn't even have the common decency to just end. The final half hour or so of the game is just this really annoying loop of running from that same nemesis-looking creature like half a dozen times, often suffering from these really random and sudden deaths when the game just defies the basic laws of common sense.
What the hell was that?
Then after all of that, Luna shows up again to tell Claudia that the whole thing's in her mind, but that she somehow got the power to manifest all of this into reality, which is why all of these monsters are apparently chasing after her. And then at that point, the game suddenly gives you a katana to use as a weapon, at which point all semblance of this game making any sense is completely gone. At least though, in the end, you can finally take down this budget bin tyrant for good, during an encounter where you've got to trick it into hitting these power boxes so it gets stunned and shows its weak spot. Repeat that like half a dozen times and then it finally ends.
It's over, Claudia.
And then for all of your hard work, you know, all 2 hours of it, you get one of the greatest endings in any video game.
Die fucker.
What the hell was that?
And to think if I only finished this whole thing in like 0.3 of an hour quicker, I would have been able to get my money back.
This is really confusing.
At the end of the day though, these are still ultimately some of the worst things ever made by another human being. And if nothing else, at least they have the most suitable titles of any game I've ever played. I also think both of these are a bit of a testament and detriment to the whole scene of indie game development. Anyone seems to be able to buy a few pre-made assets these days and have their own shoddy game thrown together in no time. Just it seems with a basic understanding of coding. And if history is any indicator, it seems that Steam is gonna lap that shit up. And games like Unbearable and Selene's Unbearable Night bring up the age-old saying of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Let me see.
But I don't want to end things on a bad note, and I hope I haven't turned you off checking out indie games, because there's plenty of other titles out there that are definitely worth checking out.
It's happening again.
Things like the Tartarus Key, Alyssa, Song of Horror, and Lost in Vivo, all way more deserving of both your money and your time. Ah! Fuck! However, if you do feel like scraping the bottom of that barrel, like I did, well hopefully this video can serve as motivation to maybe rethink that idea.
There's no way out.